الرحيم والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم.
MashaAllah Jafar, for his Sehat and Salamti, for his parents and for his teachers. Let us all recite aloud salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I would now like to request Brother Zishan Jafri and Brother Hassan Askari to please come forward at this time for the recitation of Salam and Marthiya. Let's welcome them with a loud salawat.
بر محمد و آل محمد بلندتر سلام. उलझा है मसला कोई जब भी शरीयतन उलझा है मसला कोई जब भी शरीयतन मुश्किल कुशा को सबने पुकारा ज़रूरतन उलझा है मसला कोई ہونے تو دو اشارے ابرو مرتضیٰ، ہونے تو دو اشارے ابرو مرتضیٰ، سورج کو بھی پلٹنا پڑے گا عبادتاً، الجھا ہے مسئلہ کوئی جب بھی شریعتاً، ان کا کرم تو دیکھیے آپ پہنچے قبر میں، ان کا کرم تو دیکھیے آپ پہنچے قبر میں، ہونٹوں پہ میرے یالی آیا تھا عادتاً، ہونٹوں پہ میرے یالی آیا تھا عادتاً، الجھا ہے مسئلہ کوئی جب بھی شریعتاً، مشکل کشا کو سب نے پکارا ضرورتاً، سلام
صلی علی محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجہ۔ یہ کلام 50 برس پہلے میں شاید زیادہ ہو گئے، میں یہ پڑھا تھا لاہور میں اور اب آپ کی خدمت میں۔ میری خواہش ہے کہ ہمارا یہ عقیدہ ہے کہ خاتون جنت تشریف لاتی ہیں اپنے بیٹے کے پرسے کے لیے، تو میری خواہش ہے کہ ہم مل کر آپ بھی اس پرسے میں شامل ہوں۔ میں پہلا بند پڑھوں گا، اس کے بعد آپ میرے ساتھ آواز ملائیے گا تاکہ ہم ساتھ مل کر یہ پرسہ دیں خاتون جنت کی بارگاہ میں۔ بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات، صلی علی محمد۔ کربل کی کہانی جب کوئی بھی سنائے گا، دل والوں کی آنکھوں سے ایک دریا بہائے گا، وہ قافلہ سرور کا جس شان سے نکلا تھا، صغرا کو خبر کیا تھی نہ لوٹ کے آئے گا، زہرا پرسال و بہتر کا، زہرا پرسال و بہتر کا، مہمان بلایا ہے اے کوفیوں سرور کو، مہمان بلایا ہے اے کوفیوں سرور کو، کیا کنب شہدی کا پانی نہیں پائے گا، زہرا پرسال و شہیدوں کا، زہرا پرسال و شہیدوں کا، پامال ہوئے قاسم یوں گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں سے، پامال ہوئے قاسم یوں گھوڑوں کی ٹاپوں سے، کس طرح چچا تیری میت کو اٹھائے گا، زہرا زہرا قاسم کا بھی پرسا لو، زہرا زہرا قاسم کا بھی پرسا لو، تھا ہاتھوں کے کٹنے کا کچھ غم نہ دلاور کو، تھا ہاتھوں کے کٹنے کا کچھ غم نہ دلاور کو، سیدانیوں کا پردہ اب کون بچائے گا، زہرا زہرا عباس کا پرسا لو، زہرا زہرا عباس کا پرسا لو، ٹوٹی ہے کمر شہ کی گھبرانا نہ مگر اکبر، ٹوٹی ہے کمر شہ کی گھبرانا مگر اکبر، فرزند نبی تیری میت کو اٹھائے گا، زہرا زہرا اکبر کا بھی پرسا لو، زہرا زہرا اکبر کا بھی پرسا لو، سوتے ہی نہ تھے اصغر جھولے میں تڑپتے تھے، سوتے ہی نہ تھے اصغر جھولے میں تڑپتے تھے، مادر کو خبر کیا تھی ایک تیر سلائے گا، زہرا زہرا اصغر کا بھی پرسا لو، زہرا زہرا اصغر کا بھی پرسا لو، سرور نے اٹھائے تھے سب ساتھیوں کے لاشیں، سرور نے اٹھائے تھے سب ساتھیوں کے لاشیں، شبیر تیرا لاشا اب کون اٹھائے گا، زہرا زہرا شبیر کا پرسا لو، زہرا زہرا شبیر کا پرسا لو، زہرا زہرا پرسا لو 72 کا، صلوات۔
Jazakallah Zishan uncle and Hassan Askari for their sehat and salamti and khair barakat. Let us all recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One quick request for the brothers in particular before I request Sister Sabika to come forward. Could I, with a loud salawat, if I could request all of the brothers to please stand up and move forward as much as possible, as we are continuing to expect more attendees tonight. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I would now like to request our very own Sister Sabika Musabji to please come forward at this time, where she will present the Sunday School Arba'een information. Let's welcome her with a loud salawat.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sabika Musabji, and on behalf of Baitul Ulum Sunday School Admin and the Arba'een program team, we would like to invite all of you to attend the Arba'een and Julus program on Sunday, August 4th at 10 a.m. This program is open to the entire community. Life-size scenes featuring our youths, depicting events from Shab al-Ashur to the return of Medina, will be displayed in the Walk of Reflection. Medical and dental mock-ups, packaging of school supplies for the refugees, a model of Najaf to Karbala walk, story time, and along with many other Arba'een-related activities will be held. This year, we're introducing a sensory room open for children who are autistic and or have sensory processing disorders, and will strictly be for that purpose only. Emails have been sent out for registration and participation regarding the event. We also have flyers posted up outside in the foyer and in the coat rooms. We will also have an outdoor Julus, which will take place at 10 a.m. inshallah. Please see a snippet of last year's Walk of Reflection. This program is open to the whole entire community, but we humbly request everyone, including Sunday school families, to please register on the Baitul Ulum website or on the link that has been sent in the email, so we have an accurate head count. Please help us spread the word. Youth volunteers will be able to earn volunteering hours for the Arba'een event like last year. If you have any questions, please contact Sister Shafana Musabji or Sister Maryam Tahir. Thank you for your continued support. Please recite aloud salawat.
Thank you, Sabika, and not only for her, but for all of the volunteers who put in countless hours in preparing for this Sunday School Arba'een program. Let's all recite a loud salawat for them. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In recognition of tonight's sponsors for their health, safety, and continued blessings, for their generous sponsorship tonight, they wish to remain anonymous. Let's all recite a loud salawat for them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. They have requested that you remember the marhumeen of your families as well as the marhumeen of their families. Please join me now in reciting one Surah Fatiha, one time Surah Ikhlas, preceded by a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah. Brothers and sisters, before we continue the rest of the program, I do have a few just logistical community announcements that I'd like to make once again. I would like to re-emphasize the 15th annual blood drive. It is next week, next Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In the name of Imam Hussein, let's all please try to consider registering for this. This is a very, very noble cause. These are the days of Muharram. We still need many, many more volunteers and participation, particularly from the youth. So if you haven't already, there are volunteers outside in the lobby. I would strongly encourage you to at least speak to them, try and understand what the process is, and register if you could. Number two, it has been brought to our attention that there has been an uptick or an increase in cases of COVID within our community. I would like to remind perhaps the congregation once again, there are certain protocols that we can take to ensure our public safety. For all of us in particular, if you do not feel well, it is highly recommended that you can stay at home. All of these majalis are being broadcasted live on YouTube. Additionally, if you don't feel well but you're still here, highly encourage you to wear a mask, and then also as frequently as possible washing hands, or perhaps even foregoing shaking hands just out of precaution. And then lastly, out of respect for our guest alim, I would like to request if all brothers and sisters could please take out their phones and double check that it is on mute or at the very least on vibrate before we begin tonight's program. Now, before I request Maulana to come forward, I'd like to take a moment to introduce him to all of you. Hujjatul Islam, Dr. Sayyid Ali Abbas Razawi, is a prominent British Muslim leader, serving as the Chief Imam in Scotland and the Director General of the Scottish Ahlul Bayt Society. His roles extend to being an associate at Harvard Divinity School's Project on Shiism and Global Affairs, and a visiting scholar at the University of Strathclyde. Maulana Razawi has represented Muslim communities internationally, including at the European Commission from 2012 to 2016, and nationally as an advisor for the UK's Independent Sharia Review under Theresa May. He is actively involved in the Oxfam Zakat Advisory Panel and a trustee for Faith for the Climate and the Worshipful Company of World Traders Charitable Trust. Globally, he contributes as a trustee and a member of several international bodies, including Religions for Peace, the European Council of Religious Leaders, and the UN Multi-Faith Advisory Council. He also coordinates the UNHCR Multi-Religious Council of Leaders and plays a key role in the UN Prevention of Genocide Unit. Additionally, he fulfills civic duties as a Justice of the Peace in London. With that, I have the privilege and honor of requesting Hujjatul Islam, Dr. Sayyid Ali Abbas Razawi, to please come to the minbar at this time. Let's welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Move forward as much as possible.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
أما بعد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Tonight marks the first weekend after the 10 days of Muharram. One thing I was observing as I was sitting and watching the screen, and that is that wherever in the world that you go, whichever community you address or whichever Hussainia you visit, you find that there's certain common threads amongst all of us. The most powerful of which is this Azza for Sayyid al-Shuhada and its different manifestations. You see, the culture of Imam Hussein is very important, and particularly for us as Muslims, as Shias. And within this Islamic civilization, traditionally there were 7 cultures panning across the entire empire. These cultures came together to create what is today the civilization. Now, without going into a technical discussion on civilizations and cultures and so forth, what's important is that this religion, or at least Shiism, has remained alive because of the soul of Shiism, and that is the Azza Sayyid al-Shuhada. The day that we lose this, we lose our identity. And the day that we lose it, you'll find that our communities cease to be what they are today. As a minority, probably no more than 350 million of us in the world, we're a successful community in terms of pushing beyond what we are. And the secret behind it is the culture of Imam Hussein. Over the years, if you look at our survival as well, 1100, 1200 years, our survival is because of the culture of Imam Hussein. And you may notice that across the world, even when there's Shia killings taking place, regardless of where they are, the more that you notice that Shias are being killed, the more this community comes back. The more it supports those people who are downtrodden. The more that you find this community, regardless of whether they understand it or not, are willing to come forward to help people. So even after 1400 years, even after suppression, killings, tortures, murders that have taken place, there is a common thread that brings us together. And there is a common thread that will continue to expand this community. That if we lose this, we'll lose this community, we'll lose our future generations. In the last 20 years, 10 years, you've seen situations develop in such a way that there are 2 things according to the riwayat, in particular that I've mentioned in the past, and I'll mention again, the 2 things that I hit when it comes to Islam itself. The first thing is inhiraf ad-dini. Inhiraf ad-dini basically means that there's, you could say, an entire movement even within the deen over a period of time to change it, to move it away from its core. It isn't what it was, and as we're moving forward in time, you'll see that new things are invented, new things are put in. People call it ijtihad, whatever they like to call it. The fact of the matter is this, that we've moved away from the center core more and more. And today people are confused. Children are confused, generations are confused. And in this way, if this continues the way that it is, you don't have any deen left at the end. But the other thing which is very important is inhiraf akhlaqi. In terms of the akhlaq of the community, that's being eroded. Akhlaq is not just saying salam to somebody. But akhlaq is a way of life. It's how you act, it's your character. In every respect, akhlaq is empathy to other people. Akhlaq is not looking at something you're not meant to look at. Akhlaq is not doing something that you're meant to do. So in this way, when these two things become corrupted, as it is, and as we're seeing today very quickly, what happens is that there needs to be a balancing or stabilizing force that brings us back again. If that's not present, what you'll find is that this entire community will crumble in the way that it's going. The one thing that keeps us afloat is the azab of Imam Hussein that unites everyone, wherever you go, whether it's North America, across the world that you go. It's this azab that brings people back again. However you do it, in whatever style that you do it, whether you do it in one way, giving blood, which is very important, whether you give it in another way, which is beating your chest, none of this is mutually exclusive, by the way. Everything is important for this message to carry on. One for us internally and one for externally. So the thing that when I looked at that, I felt quite happy to see that externally it's also important. If we're limiting azadari to our mosque, then what happens, there's no progress. You've come into this country and you have a message which is gold. To keep it for 30, 40 years in the four walls of this Husseini or masjid is not doing justice. Just remember that khutbah the Shaykh Saduq has mentioned when the 12th Imam comes. When he comes, the first speech that he gives is his policy speech. We've had an election, you're about to have one. Our Prime Minister, when he gave his speech, if he mentioned his grandfather, there'd be no one in the British public who'd actually think that this guy is sane. The next day you'd find every single newspaper would say, well, this guy is being very sentimental or he's lost the plot. In the same way, for example, if tomorrow whoever eventually stands up for the Democrats and maybe Trump or whoever it may be comes into power, if that person gets up and talks about his grandfather in his first speech, you're going to think, hang on a minute, what's happening here? We've got other existential problems, and he's talking about his grandfather. Imam Hussein, when he comes, the first speech that he gives is about his grandfather, Imam Hussein. Now think why he does that. Why does he do that? Is 12th Imam not a statesman? Well, he is. Does Imam not know the climate of the communities? Imam does. Why does Imam do that for? Very simply, the only answer we can think of is the name of Imam Hussein spread so far and wide, in particular in the Western world, of peace, of unity, of bringing people together, of self-sacrifice, of helping other people and so forth, that when he comes and gives a speech, everyone recognizes it. And this is why your blood drive is important. It's not my topic, I didn't want to talk on it, but it's something that's close to my heart. The largest blood drive in Scotland, faith blood drive that I come from, is Imam Hussein blood drive. 99% of people that give blood in Scotland are non-Muslims. Within the space of 10 years, 5 people have made it a national blood drive that every member of the institution, from the first minister all the way down to the bottom of society, come and give blood. And it's all online, you can see it. Now, I'm not here to blow our trumpet. What I'm here to do is to tell you it's important. Today you go to Scotland, you'll see, as a Shia, people know the difference. But today if I say Muslim, the first thing that comes into somebody's mind is terrorist. You try it anywhere in the world. You say Muslim, what's the first thing? Terrorist. You say Buddhism, regardless of what happened in Myanmar, Buddhism, meditation. Hinduism, RSS doesn't come into mind. You say Hinduism, they think of the Vedanta, or they think of maybe Mahabharata or something like that. You say Islam, terrorism. You say Ismaili, hospitals, Aghan Hospital maybe, universities. You say Bohra community, 12,000 people that they're feeding on a daily basis. You say Shia, extremism. Sunni, terrorist. What's important then? Change the mind frame of the people. You begin where? In Chicago itself. You help the system so much, you give enough blood that other people want to say, I want to give blood in the name of Imam Hussein. I want to come forward, I want to donate for this. What happened? From your center, you're actually doing tabligh, which is changing the mind frames of people. Otherwise, look, your ancestors, when they went to India, the whole system of azadari is set to convert Hindus. It's set to bring Hindus forward. So they did. How many Hindus do you see coming under the flag of Abbas? You may not believe it, but they believe in it. You may think that this is culture and khurafat or whatever it is, but they don't believe that. I've seen myself Hindus come. One or two of you I can see were in London 25 years ago when a whole group of 6 used to come, if you remember. 7, 8 of them would come to South London on the night of Abbas. Why? What has a Sikh got to do, or actually Sikh, what has a Sikh got to do with Azadari of Imam Hussein? No, there's a belief there because your elders and your ancestors in India and Pakistan did the work. But today if you go to your neighbors, they don't even know the difference between a Shia and Sunni. Look, I'm not here to differentiate between them. What I'm here is for people to know that Imam Hussein is a master of peace. People can raise a finger at everyone, but they can't raise a finger at Imam Hussein. Because what Imam Hussein does is he's changed the entire consciousness of people. Today those who know Imam Hussein love Imam Hussein. One of the biggest Jewish leaders in the UK, whose name I won't mention because he's asked me not to, he sent me a picture of him standing outside the shrine of Imam Hussein. You can imagine somebody of that caliber, one of the 3 biggest leaders, and as you know, the Jewish community in the UK is the oldest Jewish community. Anglo Jewry, the Board of Deputies, is the oldest institution, over 200 years old. Now I don't want to go any deeper because this is going live and he's told me not to mention. But he took a picture in Karbala, sent it to me. He said, I'm in Karbala, I can't propagate this, but I, as an Iraqi Jew, believe in Imam Hussein. So what does that mean? That means Imam Hussein makes a difference. If you think that Imam Hussein is not intellectual enough or Imam Hussein's system is not philosophical enough, you've made a big mistake. You know why? Because Imam Hussein appeals to people. The biggest guru in India, Shiva Sri Ravi Shankar, over 300 million. You know, he went 3 or 4 times to Imam Hussein in 2017 when my team met him. You know what he said to them? He said to them, I go and sponsor orphans in Karbala. What are your community doing for me? Imam Hussein has never closed his door to somebody. We close the door, we say you're najis, or you're pak, or you're this, or you're tahir, or you're fulan, or you're... Imam Hussein has never done that. Imam Hussein says, whoever you are, come in. When you come in, you come for us. So believe me, when the world is now coming to understand who Sayyid al-Shuhada is, I could go on and tell you, had it not been for the fact that the Dalai Lama is sick, his office reached out to my office to say that he wanted to go for 24 hours to Karbala. That's coming open knowledge, so I'll say it. But if you look at it and see, look at this movement of people wanting to go to Iraq, wanting to see Imam Hussein, wanting to go to Najaf. Both of these 2 things are important. Why is that? They're not from our faith, but they understand Imam Hussein. If we hide Imam Hussein, what's going to happen? But we've got to start somewhere. So it was nice to see. That blood drive is important. I'm not being paid to say this, by the way, but go and support them, go and help them. Help these kids, because you know why? They're making a future in this country. And for their future generations to come. When people know that you're people of peace, only then can they come to you and support you. And if they see that you're helping fellow Americans, because your blood is red and their blood is red as well, when you go and give that, when you help people, it makes a big difference. So look, on a night like this, the fact that this is the first weekend after the 10 days, the first most important thing, I think, the first takeaway message is this. Let's make sure that this message of Imam Hussein gets out. How do we do this? Look, let me tell you something, right? Maybe, and again, I don't want anybody to be offended. No, not that you will be offended. But look, when you go, let's say, for example, you have a procession in downtown, right? And I've seen this myself in London and other places. Wherever I've gone, there's a procession. So somebody comes and asks you, what are you doing this? You say, I'm doing it because of Imam Hussein. What happened? Yazid killed him. What was Yazid? He was a drunkard. So I'm a drunkard as well. He committed adultery, says my father committed adultery. These issues are so open within society. Well, you can call Yazid a drunkard, you'll find half of the population may say we're the same. Yazid used to drink wine, well, so what? Everybody else drinks wine, for example. The way that we've marketed Imam Hussein is not the case. So all of those things that you may think is negative, today's society doesn't think so. Yazid would play with animals. Well, I've got 20 dogs in the house and 15 cats. So what do you do in that situation? Right? How do you do this? No, that's not the way you market Imam Hussein. How do you market Imam Hussein? They require something. They require an overhaul of the way that we do things. And I think one of the best ways is when you do social service. When you do selfless things for people, that's where it begins. Inshallah, it begins on blood and it'll end on food. The philosophy of the Prophet was what? The first day when the Prophet called everybody together, what was the first thing he did? He fed them before he said, La ilaha illallah. If people's stomachs are filled, then people come and respond. For 3 days the Prophet fed them. He didn't turn around and say, by the way, they're najis, I'm not going to feed them. He said, everybody come, we'll feed them. These are very important things that we haven't understood. 23 years of the Prophet, 10 years he spent with Ahlul Kitab, 13 years he spent with the Hindus basically. Right? And I'm translating into our terms. He taught you a way of life there. He said, this is the way that you behave when you're with people who are polytheists. And this is the way that you behave with those people. It's an entire system in place. You could completely break this down. You could take this and do a PhD on this if you wanted to. How does a Muslim deal with Ahlul Kitab? And how is the Muslim when it comes to dealing with polytheists? The problem is we just read it and we just put it on the shelf again. We teach it and we move on. Take a lesson from this. Have you not seen, for example, other communities? You know, at least you'll see this more and more within Europe and in New York as well. Textual reasoning is something that the Jewish community do, and they do it very well. Now that professionals are coming, they're reading text, they're analyzing it, and they're taking bits out. They're saying, this is how we can apply this. This parable, this is the way that we can apply. And we know that within our Quran, Allah's not just giving stories there for the sake of it. Allah's not giving stories. You're not going to turn around to Allah and say, why are you giving all these stories for Allah? Allah, you should be giving something more than just stories. Allah will say, no, there's a reason behind this. In the way that one of the Maraja, which I know a lot of you do taqleed of, whose name I'm not going to mention, but I'll just say what he says. This Maraja says, Allah is not giving sweets to you in the Quran. When Allah says something, He means it in the Quran. If you truly understood what Allah is saying, you'd apply it. If Allah says it, you do it. It's important to do it. When Allah says, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ, Allah means it. So the second thing is this. The first thing is, look, on a weekend like this, let's make it important for us. Let's take this message and take it out. But how are we going to take it out? Let's not speak. Let's first enact. Rasulullah enacted first. He fed people, we feed people. How many people downtown, if you go there, you see, how many people of them are living rough? They're living rough. You're Shias, homeless people. You're Shias. Your philosophy is that we help other people. Look, let me give you a tradition. In fact, Ayatollah Faqih Imani used to say this. Faqih Imani is the son-in-law of Ayatollah Khoui, one of the son-in-laws. Ayatollah Faqih Imani used to say, and I was reading this the other day, so Murtaza Kashmiri, as you know, Baqir Kashmiri and co, the one family. So Mushrik Kashmiri is the son-in-law of Ayatollah Sistani. Right, just to give you a bit of history. His uncle is Sayyid Radhi Kashmiri, who passed away. He was one of the Urafa of the family. So as you know, the family is through the lineage of Allama Sayyid Murtaza Kashmiri. So this is the great-grandfather, the great mystic of Najaf, basically, the official mystic of Najaf, you could say. His nephew, or his grandson, Sayyid Radhi Kashmiri, when he passed away, he had a book, which later on one of his students copied and he gave it to me. Within that he has a story. Now this book is not on public access, but it's it's passed down from family members to family members and then students. In that there's something that he mentions very beautifully, and I want to mention to you today. And he says that when I went to Faqih Imani, Ayatollah Faqih Imani, to speak to him, Ayatollah Faqih Imani he said that one of my friends had met the 12th Imam. Now this tells you that there is a way that ulama throughout time have met the 12th Imam. And that he says that there are 3 things that have come down to us, that he writes this down, that I want to tell you. 3 things that he says. The first thing is to do with prayer, or 2 things, and one of them is to do with practice. So that tells you that here the Imam is not turning around and saying just go and pray 1,000 units of prayers. What the Imam is saying is 3 things, one in relation to prayer, and I'll explain to you exactly why this is. The first thing he says is this. He says that what's important is this. First of all, if you want to build a connection with the master of your time, again it's important, because otherwise, what's the point of us being Shia? You could be anything else, you could be if there's no connection, if the Imam is just a mafhum meaning a concept in your mind, it's like Allah, for example. Let me expand on this very quickly. You believe in Allah, you believe in Him, but you believe in Him as a concept. Is what they call in philosophy a mafhum. You don't believe in Him as tahaqquq. It's not a reality. I'll give you an example. Your mother's a reality. If she was standing in front of you, you wouldn't sin. You'd feel some embarrassment. Why? She's a reality to you. Your great-grandfather is not a reality to you. Allah's not a reality to you. You know why? Because you sin, even though Allah's watching you. So therefore your mother has a higher position than Allah does in reality. It's the case. It is the case. And you know why? Because Allah's not a reality to you. What Allah is to you is a concept. In the same way, the concept, so if I'll explain it. Reality and concept, two different things. Concept is you have a mafhum in your mind. You have a concept in your mind, but that doesn't mean that it's a reality. For example, you know, some people know the Day of Judgment exists, but it's not a reality for them. Reality is when you see it. A concept is when it's in your mind. Lying is a concept which is in your mind that it's haram. You'll still lie because it's not a reality. Right? Am I explaining it? It's a bit of a concept, but let me explain it. I've heard all of you can understand these concepts, so let me explain it again. Lying is haram. You know it's haram, I know it's haram. God forbid I lie. I won't say you lie because we're all masoom here other than myself. If I lie, what happens? I know it's haram, it's a concept, it's not a reality. Backbiting. Backbiting, you know and I know it's haram. You won't backbite because it's a reality to you. If I backbite, God forbid, it's because it's a concept in my mind. That yaqeen hasn't come in. So as you can see, there's stages of ilm. Ilm first starts off with ilmul yaqeen. Ilmul yaqeen is you read books, you're gaining ilm, you're rationalizing, you're philosophizing, you're writing up your PhD, whatever it may be, but that reality is not coming into you. Islam doesn't say just read books. Islam says make it a reality. That's why the 6th Imam has said, what is ilm? إِنَّمَا هُوَ نُورٌ يَقْذِفُهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ مَن يَشَاءُ. Ilm doesn't come with reading books, the Imam says. He says ilm is a light, true knowledge. True knowledge is a reality inside of you. When you come to know God, it's not a concept anymore. Now you know God. God is with you at every step of the way. In the same way, the 12th Imam is the same thing. For most of us, the Imam is a concept. The Imam is not a reality. When this heart begins to bend towards the Imam, then it becomes a reality. How does it become a reality? Here Faqih Imani says 3 things written in this book. He says the first thing is this: Ziyarat Ali Yasin. Now you may ask, what's the ziyarah? Ziyarat Ali Yasin, if you want to understand the philosophy of Imamah, you don't need to go very far, just read the ziyarah. The ziyarah in and of itself is so powerful that if a person continuously recites a meaning every single day, you'll see that the tahaqquq of the Imam comes into oneself. So all of these du'as that have been given, it's not just given for the sake of giving. They're codified realities. The 4th Imam's methodology of spreading Islam, if you look at it and see, was through these du'as. The purpose of the du'a is what? It's so hidden that your enemy doesn't know. Today we have debates on the isnad of hadith. But this literature that we call devotional literature, which is the literature of ziyarat and so forth, there's not that much of a discussion on that. Those du'as will continuously recite. Because within those du'as, within those ziyarat, there's a secret there. And through recitation it comes into our souls. First thing is this. Second thing Faqih Imani says, he says, look, the Imam said, he said the second thing which is important is this. Dua for the faraj of the Imam, basically is the way that he put it. For the coming or the relief of the Imam. And the third thing he said was quite interesting. He shifts gears and he goes into another direction. He said the third thing is this. Help those people who are weak in your society. What defines a Shia is helping those who are the weakest in your society. He didn't say the weakest Muslim. He didn't say the weakest Shia. He said those human beings who are weak. Today, if there are people downtown who are homeless and hungry, it is our responsibility, in particular in Muharram, in the name of Imam Hussein, go and help them. If I'm saying something wrong, tell me. But if tomorrow, when you feed, look, I'll give you an example, because things don't solidify without examples. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example as to what happened. 20 years ago, I can now say that, it's amazing you say 20 years. And 20 years ago, when potentially my hair was a bit browner than it is now, there was an incident that took place. Now, I don't know if you have the concept of a hospice. At least in Europe, when a person's dying, they put him into a hospice. So this happened in Bradford. There was an elderly man who was put into hospital, and as you know, sometimes the way that it works, people don't come and see their relatives. So he was a Christian, and as is the culture in Europe, but they put you in the old people's home and that's it. People forget about you. Islam's philosophy has always been to help your elders and your parents and everything else. That system is not there within the European system. They put him in a hospice, leave him to die kind of thing. So one of our boys was working there. So the 7th, 8th of Muharram, he decides to go, I think this is probably about 2007 or so, decides to go into the hospice, and he does khidmah of this person. He does khidmah of this old man. So this old man turns around and says to him, son, you're a very good Christian. Very good Christian. You come, you feed me, you help me, you sit with me. So he says, brother, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Muslim. He says, you're a Muslim? He goes, what does Islam teach? In the space of 2 days, this man had converted in front of our eyes. The day that he converted and he did his shahada, 3 hours later he died. Why? Akhlaq. Akhlaq. And that's the one thing that today you find that within our communities is lacking. That's akhlaq. Here the Imam says, go and help those people who are the weakest in your community. Those people who don't have anybody else. Those people who are suffering. Empathize with them. Go help them. What happens? When people see love, that's where they change. You're not going to change aggressively. If I want to do tabligh, I'm not going to go and hit you with a bat. But if I teach you with love, that's where everything changes. Here, 6th Imam alayhi salam, there's a hadith, Allama Majalis narrates it. One of his companions of the Imam was a person by the name of Zakaria. Zakaria converted from Christianity. He had a mother in Kufa who was still Christian. They say that when Hajj time came, he decides from Kufa to go to Mecca for Hajj. And after performing Hajj, he goes to Medina to meet the Imam. When he goes to meet the Imam has a conversation with him, and Zakaria asks him, Mawla, have you got any amr for me? Is there anything that you want me to do? He says, I want to ask you a question. He says, yes. He says, your mother is alive? He says, yes. He says, your mother lives with you? He says, yes. Your mother's Christian? He says, yes. I want you to serve her as my Shia. I want you to do as much khidmah of your mother as possible. As long as, he says, well, but she's not a Muslim. He says, doesn't matter. You eat with her. As long as there's no pork there, he says, you eat with her. You put the morsel in her mouth. You make sure that she's okay. You serve her. You do service towards her. It's as if you've done service to us. This is Zakaria goes back to Kufa, and he begins to serve his mother. A day comes where his mother asks, she says, son, ever since you've come back from Mecca, you've changed. You went for the Hajj, you came back, you've changed. What happened? He replies, he says that my Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, he says that my uncle, my Imam, said to me to do good with you. So she says something strange. She says, son, is he a prophet? He says, no. She says, son, you're mistaken. Within our tradition, only prophets say that. So he smiles at Zakaria, says, no, he's not a prophet, but he's the son of a prophet. She turns around and she says, that means that your religion is on the haqq. I too want to convert. She prayed Maghrib and she passed away. Why? What did the Imam say? Be good. regardless of what the faith is, regardless of what the religion is. So second lesson today. First lesson was this: make sure that you spread this message of Imam Hussein, because the message of Imam Hussein is so pristine. Second message is this though: how do you spread it? We spread it through akhlaq. If there's no akhlaq, people are going to run away. It doesn't matter how beautiful your mosque is. If you're disrespectful to somebody, they're not going to want to come back here. I know I wouldn't want to come back if somebody was disrespectful to me. And you think they're going to come to you? No, if you're an ambassador of Islam, you're meant to attract people to you. You're meant to be those people who, when you go out, your akhlaq is such. But if the akhlaq is not there, if there's an arrogance there, then that's not going to happen. If people in particular, people who are lower than you or inferior, for example, you may think they're inferior. You don't know in the eyes of Allah what they are. If you look at the awliya of Allah, a lot of them have been people who you would just think about, who is this person? Right? But you would think that. But the biggest lesson Allah teaches is from a person that you think is not up to your social status. I'll give you an example. Our communities, even to this day, and I say our communities, I mean the wider communities, how racist are we all? How racist are we? Even today, 21st century, the racism that you find within our community is second to none. Right? You wouldn't give your daughter to certain people, even if they were Muslim. Let's be honest. Racism is there. What does Allah do? Let me track it back. In the time of Dawood and Suleiman, there was a black African slave. Right? And forget today. Today people are racist. In those days, no university he'd been to. But he's known as Hakim. And every conversation he had was only with his son. In a situation like that, a guy like that dies, you would expect that nobody would remember him. Black African slave. Been to no university. The only conversation he ever had with was his son. In the time of Dawood. If today's racist, imagine then. Allah liked it so much that today you have to kiss that name. Your dua is not accepted in the month of Ramadan until you don't put the Quran on your head. In that Quran is the chapter of Luqman. Luqman is that black African slave that Allah loves so much that He enshrined him in the Quran. So as you can see, Allah's standard is different from us. Allah's standard is completely different from us. Allah likes something, He'll enshrine it. It doesn't necessarily need to be now. It doesn't need to be now or in 10 years time or in 15 years time. Quran was revealed over 1,000+ years later. The world had forgotten Luqman. Even in his lifetime people know who he was. Allah liked it so much, He said, I'm going to put it in the entire chapter will name it after Luqman. Every conversation of his is Ya Bunayya, speaking to his son. So what does Allah do? That's what the difference is. Third lesson is this: with akhlaq, ikhlas is important. Ikhlas is important. Akhlaq is one, ikhlas is something else. Without sincerity, we're not going to get anywhere. Sincerity is important. Sincerity makes you alive forever. Imam Hussein is alive today because of his sincerity. Right? That's why he's alive for today. He was very sincere to the extent that Allah made sure that the world remembers him. You do the same thing for the sake of Allah, you'll see that you live on for it as well. Your sincerity is what's important. So this is the other thing. Imam Hussein requires people who are sincere. The message of Imam Hussein means you're sincere to Imam Hussein. You submit to Imam Hussein. That's what submitting to Imama means. Abbas, with everything that he had, submitted to Imama. Habib, with everything that he had, submitted to Imama. You think Habib doesn't know everything that's going to take place? Look at the tradition, you see. Amir al-Mu'mineen taught him Manaya wal Balaya. Habib knows. But at the same time, you notice that Habib doesn't show off his knowledge in front of the Imam of the time. You think Abbas doesn't know? That family, that the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen doesn't know? Of course, son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But submission to Imama. This is why you'll notice that there's a Kalami discussion that says that there are two types of Quran in any given time. Quran and Natiq, Quran is Samit. In Rasulullah's time, Rasulullah was Quran al-Natiq, Amir al-Mu'mineen was Quran al-Samit. The minute Amir al-Mu'min, and you know, look at this, first 13 years of Islam, nobody knows who Ali ibn Abi Talib is. Nobody knows until the last couple of years who Amir al-Mu'mineen is. And even then, not even one saying of the Imam is in those days. Why? Quran is Samit. Ali now becomes Amir al-Mu'mineen, becomes the Imam. Imam Hassan is quiet. Quran is Samit. Imam Hassan comes in. All of that time, Imam Hussein doesn't say a word. Imam Hussein comes in, Imam Zain al-Abidin becomes Quran as-Samit. To the extent that people on the night of Ashura didn't know who the Imam was afterwards. They were all thinking Ali Akbar was the Imam. Later on they realized Imam Zain al-Abidin is. What does that mean? Is Imam not Imam Mansus min Allah? He is. Doesn't he have Ruh al-Qudus? He does. But Imam knows. When Hujjatullah is there, you remain quiet. So here you see in Karbala what happens. Quiet. You're sincere to the Imam, your submission to the Imam is such. Then your ilm is nowhere. My ilm is to myself, but here the Imam of the time. A different story altogether. So in the same way, ikhlas is important. Ikhlas is important. Third thing is this. Ijtihad. You say, what do you mean ijtihad? We're not mujtahids. No. Ijtihad comes from juhad. Juhad means to struggle. So your final lesson is this. It's important to struggle. What does struggling mean, right? Struggle means this. Work hard. Try your best. And then leave it to Allah. Look, it's possible that on the first Muharram, you'll get 10 guys who come and give blood. For argument's sake, to go back to your blood drive again. Maybe the next year you have a bit more. You'll be more successful than Nuh was in 900 years. Alright? But if you look at what Nuh did for 950 years, he continued. People get despondent if it doesn't happen in 40 days because we live in such a fast-paced society. It's not happening, what should we do? Let's leave it. And Nuh, 950 years, my friend. And he still struggled. So doing tabligh in the way of Allah is not easy. You think immediately within 900 days you're going to be successful? Not the case. Perseverance. This is where ijtihad comes in. Here from juhad, here to struggle. You've got to struggle. You've got to struggle. Continuously. To do good is not going to come on your plate. If you want to make a change, if you want to make a difference, difference comes via struggling. Right? But look, on that note, look, this, a lot to say. And I know that our time is fast coming to an end. The clock is right in front of me, so I can monitor the time. I have maybe 3 or 4 minutes. One of the things that I found from my own personal experience that keeps a community, in particular in this time, is Azan Azadar of Imam Hussein. Anywhere in the world that you go, anywhere you go, you'll see this. The youth in the last 10 years, this time last year I was sitting in Dar es Salaam, for example, from Dar es Salaam to North America, to Europe, to Australia, New Zealand. We call this, let's say, the Western world or semi-Western world, Dubai, semi-Western to Western world. The time of social media, Snapchat, Facebook, all of these things which I don't have, by the way. Thank God. All of those things, in this particular fast-moving time, I've noticed that there's one thread. You feel a bit despondent that Islam is going to leave, Azadari is going to leave, there's no future. And then all of a sudden you find these kids coming together, in particular in Arba'in. I've noticed I remember last time I did the walk, there was a 10, 13-year-old boy in front of me. At every step he was ahead of me. I was thinking, young man, what's the story with you? He says, I don't know, but something is pulling me towards Imam Hussein. Right? Something that's pulling me. There's things which you can't rationalize. That's the power of the soul. That's the magnetism of Imam Hussein. So the one thing that I've seen in the youth, which is bringing everybody together, is Azah. The other day, honestly, I was thinking to myself, I was in Toronto, and I was in a center whereby you knew they don't know the language. So was a whole group of people mataming away, right? If I can use that term. Noha was in Punjabi. They spoke Gujarati. The remaining spoke some Urdu broken, but they spoke predominantly English. But everybody's mataming. Although, subhanallah, that's how everybody's coming together. Azai Hussein. There's a philosophy behind this. And the weird thing was that there were 3 or 4 Iraqis in there and 2 or 3 Afghanis as well. Not understanding a word of what was saying, but they knew Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. And then people say, well, no, make sure they only matam for 5 minutes. Brother, they're not, otherwise they'd be in the clubs. Give them at least half an hour, let them do their thing, for example. Right? Bringing people together. Azaa of Imam Hussein, the philosophy is amazing. You know, honestly, if you sit down and you think about it, that's another PhD right there. Sit down, go to university, do Azaa. How does Azaa of Imam Hussein bring people together? And how has it kept the Shia community alive? There's something within grieving for Imam Hussein that makes you alive again. It makes your soul alive. But just remember this. The most important thing is this. It makes that concept into reality. The reality of Fatima comes into your heart. Why do you come in grief for, if I may say? To quote a hadith of the 6th Imam, one day Imam was sitting there crying. If the Imam can cry, we can cry. We're not bigger than our Imam. We're not bigger than our Imam. We're not greater than our Imam. Imam is crying. It's not something outdated. Imam is Imam Ma'sus Mansus min Allah. For those people who believe in it, ilm ladunni of the Imam. I know some people may not, but some people do believe that the Imam is ilm ladunni. That Imam has knowledge. Ila yawm al-qiyamah, of everything that's going to come. That Imam is crying. Somebody asks him, they say, Mawla, what are you crying for? You know what he replies? In a nutshell, he encapsulates everything. He says the reason why we cry is it gladdens the heart of our grandmother Fatima Zahra. That's it. That's why we cry. We cry because it gladdens the heart of our mother Fatima. Look, I want to give you a tradition. These are the nights of Imam Sajjad. These are the nights of Sayyidah Zainab. A man comes to Imam Sajjad and he asks him a question. He says, Mawla, would you please come to the marriage of my son? Imam says, he says, listen, after Ali Akbar, we don't go to weddings anymore. This man wasn't getting it. He emphasizes again, he says, Mawla, it'd be the honor of my family if you could come to the wedding of my son. Imam says, brother, you know, after Karbala he says, please. Imam is Imam al-Rauf. Imam says, fine, I'll come to the wedding of your son on one condition. He says, what is that? He says, recite the musibah of my father. You know this culture we have in weddings, just before you go, you recite the musibah? This is where it comes from Imam Zain al-Abidin. There's a hikmah behind all of these things. He says, look, I'll come if you recite the musibah of my father. He says, fine. So Imam Zain al-Abidin comes. Wise gets up, begins to recite poetry for. They say people begin to cry. They begin to cry. Imam looks up and he says, no, not like that. Tears were rolling. He says, no. He says, switch off the lights. They said, why? He says, maybe somebody feels embarrassed to cry. So all the lights are switched off. And then after that, then people begin to cry and they begin to wail in the way that Imam wanted. He said the walls were crying, the ground, it was as if everyone was crying everywhere. When everybody finished, when the lights were switched on, people looked to see Imam was missing. They couldn't see him anywhere. Somebody looked up and they saw the Imam was standing next to where your shoes would be, next to the door, standing over there. Somebody said, Mawla, why are you standing here? You know what the reply he gave? He says, when I came here, I was your guest. When I came here, I was your guest. Now that you've cried for my father Hussein, all of you now are my guests. Today you're the guest of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Today you're the guest of the Imam. Therefore I just want to recite 2 things in that set. 2 things in that set. 2 things. I want you to go, if you get an opportunity, the next time you go to Sayyid Ruqayya, I'll give you the sanad of this. If you go to Sayyid al-Ruqayya, if you look at the back of the ziyarah, there used to be a tradition which is still there. In that tradition, it deals with one thing. It deals with the separation of a father and a daughter. Father and a daughter. It deals with the separation of that. Small 4-year-old girl. You know what she says? Ulama have debated this. Why did Sakina die for? What made her die? The reply is trauma made her die. What trauma was it? Trauma was this. She'd never seen her father being beaten before. Even in Karbala, she was in the tent. For this 4-year-old girl, her father was a hero, you could say. Everything was her father. And as you know, Abdul Muttalib says something. He says, have 10 sons, have 11 sons, have one daughter though. Why? Your daughter's the one who keeps your legacy. You'll see, God forbid, if a father passes away, sons may do other things, but the daughter will remember her father always. And you'll see that a problem when it befalls a daughter, she doesn't phone her husband first, she phones her father. Small 4-year-old Sakina, they say, small girl. She'd never seen her father ever been beaten. She's Masuma. The day when she saw was when the cut head of Imam Hussein was brought to Yazid. Yazid was beating the face of Imam Hussein. Sakina began to tremble. She began to shake. Trauma of seeing her father being beaten like this, tradition says, is why she died. They say that when she did finally pass away, if you look and see, fathers know this. Fathers can see, you know immediately what father is in this hall. They say that when she died, if you look at the Ziyarat Nama, if ever you go to Sham, Allah give you the nasib to go there. When you go you go to this lonely grave. Even today Sakina's lonely. Look at it and say, honestly. Honestly, she's lonely. 2009, I remember when I was at the shrine of Sayyid al-Ruqayya, they say that you still feel the loneliness. Young boy was sitting there. He was with his father, he's from the West. Small boy, must have been 5-6 years old, he had a teddy bear in his hand. You look at the child. When his father wasn't looking, he went up and he put the teddy bear right next to the zari of this 4-year-old girl. Turned back, his father saw, he says, son, why did you put your teddy bear? We bought this teddy bear for you. You know what he replied? He says, Daddy, he says that I have you, but this girl is very lonely. Child fed the loneliness. Go and see and look and see. Ziyarat Nama, look at the back. When this girl finally passes away, they say the time of ghusl and kafan comes. When the time for ghusl and kafan comes, the women come screaming 3 times out. The first time they come out screaming, they say, this girl has fungus on her body. Fungus on her body. Imam Sajjad says this green and red and blue is not fungus. It's when shimmer would beat her. Second time they say they come running. You know what the second time was? They said that every time we try and take the shirt off, the skin starts coming off. Burns on her skin starts. Imam says, leave the shirt. Final time though they come running out. They said, Sajjad, we can't give ghusl and kafan to this. Said, why? Said, she has a disease. Said, why just say that? Says, every time we pour water over her hair begins to shred. Imam looks up and says, that's not disease. Shimmer would grab her by the hair. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Matam Hussein.
Ya Hussein, 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 Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya
Hussein, Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
دونوں بازو وہ شہنشاہ ہے وفا کے تھامے، لاش عباس پہ شبیر بکا کرتے تھے، بھائی تم بعد ہمارے جاتے، بھائی تم بعد ہمارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
اس طرح لگتی ناک پر کہ کلیجے مسنا، اس طرح ہوتی نہ سادات کے خیموں میں فغاں، اس طرح لگتی ناک پر کہ کلیجے مسنا، اس طرح ہوتی نہ سادات کے خیموں میں فغاں، یوں نہ زینب کے سہارے جاتے، یوں نہ زینب کے سہارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے 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 جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
گردن شاہ پہ یورن میں نہ خنجر چلتا، یوں نہ خورشیدی امامت سر مقتل ڈھلتا، گردن شاہ پہ یورن میں نہ خنجر چلتا، یوں نہ خورشیدی امامت سر مقتل ڈھلتا، یوں نہ سر نیزوں پہ سارے جاتے، یوں نہ سر نیزوں پہ سارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
دونوں بازو وہ شہنشاہ ہے وفا کے تھامے، لاش عباس پہ شبیر بکا کرتے تھے، دونوں بازو وہ شہنشاہ ہے وفا کے تھامے، لاش عباس پہ شبیر بکا کرتے تھے، بھائی تم بعد ہمارے جاتے، بھائی تم بعد ہمارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
ہوتے عباس دلاور تو نہ خیمے جلتے، شام غربت نہ سکینہ کو تماچے لگتے، ہوتے عباس دلاور تو نہ خیمے جلتے، شام غربت نہ سکینہ کو تماچے لگتے، گوشوارے نہ اٹھارے جاتے، گوشوارے نہ اٹھارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے 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 جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
ہوتے عباس تو چھنتی ناردا زینب کی، پاؤں میں عابد مضطر کی نہ بیڑی دلتی، ہوتے عباس تو چھنتی ناردا زینب کی، پاؤں میں عابد مضطر کی نہ بیڑی دھلتی، تازیانے بھی نہ مارے جاتے، تازیانے بھی نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس 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 نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
ہوتے عباس تو چھنتی ناردا زینب کی، پاؤں میں عابد مضطر کی نہ بیڑی دھلتی، ہوتے عباس تو چھنتی ناردا زینب کی، پاؤں میں عابد مضطر کی نہ بیڑی دھلتی، تازیانے بھی نہ مارے جاتے، تازیانے بھی نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
ہو کے پابند رسن سید سجاد چلے، نہر کو دیکھ کے روتے ہوئے یہ کہنے لگے، ہو کے پابند رسن سید سجاد چلے، نہر کو دیکھ کے روتے ہوئے یہ کہنے لگے، سب وطن ساتھ ہمارے جاتے، سب وطن ساتھ ہمارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے،
کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
آج بھی آتی ہے یہ قبر سکینہ سے صدا، اے چچا لاتی نہ زندان میں یوں ہم کو قضا، آج بھی آتی ہے یہ قبر سکینہ سے صدا، اے چچا لاتی نہ زندان میں یہ ہم کو قضا، ساتھ گھر ہم بھی تمہارے جاتے، ساتھ گھر ہم بھی تمہارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے،
کاش
عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے
جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے۔
حال کربل جو کوئی پوچھتا تھا نور علی، رو کے زینب یہی کہتی تھی صدا نور علی. حال کربل جو کوئی پوچھتا تھا نور علی، رو کے زینب یہی کہتی تھی صدا نور علی. کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، 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 کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے. یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا علی خیر العمل، حیا علی خیر العمل. یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین. ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی. ہے ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے، پاؤں میں ہے آبلے اور آبلوں میں خار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی. پاؤں میں ہے آبلے اور آبلوں میں خار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو آنکھ میں آنسو اور زخم جگر میں، ہونٹوں پر ردا کا نوحہ کرب و بلا سے ہے شام تلک جو کانٹوں پہ سفر کرتا تھا بے ردا سیدانیاں اس پر ستم بازار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام آنکھ میں آنسو اور زخم جگر میں، ہونٹوں پہ ردا کا نوحہ کرب و بلا سے ہے شام تلک جو کانٹوں پہ سفر کرتا تھا بے ردا سیدانیاں اس پر ستم بازار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام پاؤں میں ہے آبلے اور آبلوں میں خار بھی، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام موقع سنا پر ہے پاپ کا سر ہے، اس بات سے دل بے قابو، بے چادر ہے ناموس پیمبر، ماحول شرابی ہر سو خون رو، حصار با اور سید ابرار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو دیکھنے والی آنکھوں نے دیکھا اس راہ میں یہ بھی منظر، ایک مسافر پابند سفر ہے، خود اپنی لاش اٹھا کر یہ امام وقت ہے، اور قافلہ سالار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو پاؤں میں ہے آبلے اور آبلوں میں خار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام دیکھنے والی آنکھوں نے دیکھا اس راہ میں یہ بھی منظر، ایک مسافر پابند سفر ہے، خود اپنی لاش اٹھا کر یہ امام وقت ہے، اور قافلہ سالار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو خون رگوں کا یا غیرت ہاشم کہتی ہے جھکا لے سر کو، تو سلاسل کیا قید کریں گے، ہے صبر کے اس پیکر کو سر اٹھا، ایک اس طرح ہے راہ میں بازار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام خون رگوں کا یا غیرت ہاشم کہتی ہے جھکا لے سر کو، تو سلاسل کیا قید کریں گے، ہے صبر کے اس پیکر کو سر اٹھا، ایک اس طرح ہے راہ میں بازار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام اس پر کے جو پاؤں میں ہے آبلے اور آبلوں میں خار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے، ہو سلام دیکھ کے زینب سجاد کی حالت فریاد یہی کرتی تھی، میرا یقین ہے ایمان ہے میرا، ہے شام کے بے کس قیدی روئیں گے تجھ پر صدا، مسند بھی اور دستار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی ہو سلام بیٹھا کہیں پر جب تھک کے مسافر 40 شبوں کا جاگا، نیند جو آئی کس قیدی کو دروں سے جگایا جاتا دیکھ کر رویا فلک اور زینب لاچار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے ہو سلام بیٹھا کہیں پر جب تھک کے مسافر 40 شبوں کا جاگا نیند جو آئی بے کس قیدی کو دروں سے جگایا جاتا دیکھ کر رویا فلک اور زینب لاچار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو ہے ہو سلام پاؤں میں ہے ابلے اور آبلوں میں غار بھی ہو سلام ہے ہو سلام اس پر کے جو گناہ ہے عرفان اور مظہر تاریخ مقاتل سب ہی آل پیمبر اور شام کی گلیاں شبیر کا بیٹا قیدی کیوں نہ ہو محو فغاں قرطاس بھی اشعار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی پاؤں میں ہے آبلے اور آبلوں میں خار بھی ہو سلام اس پر کے جو قیدی بھی ہے بیمار بھی ہے ہو سلام اس پر کے جو یا حسین یا حسین
متوجہ زیارت بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم اللہم انت السلام ومنك السلام ولك السلام وإليك يعود السلام سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام على الأئمة الهادين المهديين السلام على جميع الأنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين سبلك السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام على علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام على محمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين. السلام على جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام على موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام على علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام على محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام على علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام على الحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام على الحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي. صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.